I think I got this. Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to get started for today. So we have the pleasure of listening to Dhritiman's dissertation seminar talk. And to introduce him, we have Lee.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lee Vinsel. I'm a professor in this department. I am such a lucky guy because I have the easy and lovely job of introducing this wonderful man, Dhritiman Barman, a doctoral student in our program who will defend his already largely written dissertation early this fall. Now, Dhritiman has his dark sides, his thoughts sometimes, his love of death metal and black concert teas. I thought I would see one today. But I am struck by how often when I'm walking through life and I mention his name, people get these lovely, warm smiles on their faces because he is such a sweet dude and a tremendous gift to our community. He came to us with a master's degree, basically in STS, and for a while, he felt around various topics. But then one day, I was inspired to write our email list and suggest that someone might study the newly emerging and very interesting THC markets here in Virginia. I think I called it something like THC in the NRV. And then, to my surprise, Dhritiman said he wanted to do it. And at first, I must say, I was pretty unsure and skeptical. I was like, is this really what you want to do for you? Like, is this what you're into? But he just kept thinking about it and working on it and digging into it. And it's been great. And because of his love of death metal and his concert t-shirts and his tattoos and his way of being, some people might think he got into this topic because he's like a giant stoner or something. That's really not true, though. If anything, I would say it's safe to say his doctoral advisor is a bigger stoner than he is. So it's not really that that's driven it. It's really been his intellectual and other kinds of interests in this topic, and I wanted to make that clear. Dhritiman and I have talked a lot about images and models of teaching over time. He comes from India, and there they have the model of the guru as one picture of the teacher, whereas my idea of what teaching is came from my hippie progressive education where we called teachers by our first names, didn't have to do homework or go to class, could do whatever we wanted. We were very casual and informal, and that's kind of who I am. But one thing I know, and people say this a lot, you know when education is working because the roles start to reverse. And Dhritiman has become a teacher to me in this topic, and I've learned so much from him, and it is really, really great stuff. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce him to you all, to give his talk, his dissertation seminar talk, The Architecture of a Gray Market, a field-theoretic analysis of the making of a quasi-legal cannabis market in Southwest Virginia. Go for it.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. And Lee, I don't know what to say about the whole introduction, but I'm really glad that you came up with this, and it means a lot. Really stoked to be here and excited to share a piece of my dissertation with you all today. Here's the title. I'll say it again: The Architecture of a Gray Market, a field-theoretic analysis of the making of a quasi-legal cannabis market in Southwest Virginia. Two things that I might get a little nervous, so I might speak faster, and I'll have to sit here once in a while because I have some back problem. And I also want to make one thing clear is that the terms here that I'm going to use very often, like gray, quasi-legality, loopholes, Yes, these are my analytical term, but these are also actors category. This is how they see themselves in the market as well. So before I go on to my speech today, so I just wanted to show you this Facebook post that came from one of the protagonists from our story today. She posted this on Wednesday, and I'm going to take you through this for a little bit. So first, this is how they're seeing right now how the market is unfolding. Sales are delayed again, which has been always the case with this market. It was initially supposed to be on January, but now it has moved to July. And if you look at this number one, that she says that people don't just stop buying cannabis, so this keeps everything in the same gray market longer. So see, they are already using these kinds of terms. Then fewer retail licenses. Then third one is the big operators still have a major advantage, which they have been trying to fight for a very long time, especially in Southwest Virginia. More enforcement, especially towards shops like them, like the vape shops or specialty shops. And harsher penalties are being proposed, which they are not a big fan of. Less clarity for businesses. And then she goes on to say that it is make it harder for small business to participate. From where we are sitting, that feels accurate. And right now, the path looks more delayed, more competitive, and less accessible. So the reason I showed you this Facebook post from her is that because this is what my talk is about today, how people make market arrangement during uncertainty. So my research is guided by two main questions. So the first one is, how do agents in the market actually think and act when the rules are changing and the enforcement is uneven? And the second, how do they use their technical knowledge like product science and their ideas about the definition of the regulation and the various communications channels that they use to legitimize their position in the market. And my research, my speech today is based on the ethnographic work that I conducted back in the summer of 2025. Things have changed since then, and now with our first female governor, first ever female governor of Virginia taking office, things are going to drastically change now. So, but at the moment of speaking, Virginia's cannabis market remains simultaneously legal, illegal, and quasi-legal. And quasi-legality is the aspect that I'm interested in investigating in my dissertation. So, in Virginia, it's weird because you can have your own cannabis. That means like you can grow it in your own backyard, 4 plants max, but you cannot buy it from store except from medical dispensaries. But at the same time, products that behave like cannabis are being openly sold in like vape shops, gas stations, and other specialty shops, something that I'm going to talk further in this speech today. So here I'm going to take some time and take you through my theoretical approach just to make sense of how I approach my research here in this dissertation. So I have 4 key steps to my research. First, I consider this market a strategic action field in formation. It's an arena where agents compete and cooperate over rules, norms, meanings, and legitimacy. Second, the field is not stable. Rules are unclear and enforcement is uneven. Third, in order to understand how the field is being shaped, I am bringing Michel Callon's STS studies of market, where he talks about markets are built through devices. And in this case, people use various loopholes, regulatory gaps, and various communications channels, etc. And fourth, this is my kind of like contribution to the field theory and STS in general, theoretically. So field theory in economic sociology is about market as an institution, which is a socio-cultural and political approach. And what I'm arguing is that if we look at Callon's argument, so it's really interesting to see how socio-technical arrangement also plays a big role in modern capitalist market. So in this market, there are market agents internal to the market, which means cannabis shop owners, growers and hemp farm owners. these are the people, they actively participate in the market itself, and there are external agents like social justice advocates, scientists, academicians, and the state. So the state is very important in the field because it is ultimately the state who is going to sanction the rules governing action in the field. However, all these market agents, both internal and external, at the advent of new field, their social actions are not mutually exclusive. It's mutually enforced and it mutually coexist and co-evolve. However, all these agents operate under different power dynamics, and based on whatever the resources they have, they compete over rules, meanings, and legitimacy. According to Neil Fligstein, he says that for a field to become stable, it should have stable property rights, it should have a stable governance and enforcement structure, it should have rules of exchange like licensing and retailing, and a stable conception of control. So the conception of control is the idea that agents in the market have a shared understanding of how the market should function, what the rules are, what counts as legitimate action, who belongs to this market. But at the moment, cannabis market, we do not have that stable conception of control, and different market agents have competing visions of what the rules should be in order for them to stabilize the market itself. And to bring this specific architecture to light is further advanced by the fact that the socio-political infrastructure shaping this new market is constructed through market devices. And Michel Callon highlighted how these institutional arrangements are enacted materially and technically. So market device as a concept allows us to understand, for instance, how a plant's chemical properties enable transaction, calculate value, and perform in the market. So here is what I found routinely through my research is that market agents aim to disentangle the plant's specific properties from different moral and legal ambiguities, but at the same time, they also strategize to prevent the same plant qualities being reattached to illegitimacy through uncontrolled circulation. And this is what I'm going to speak later in my talk today. And so by integrating these three frameworks, my study situates the hemp cannabis store as a strategic arm of Southwest Virginia's legal cannabis market as a socially, technically, and politically and institutionally constructed meso-level social arena. So this market is new, dynamic, chaotic, contested, and partially ordered field where laws, technologies, and social action intersect and coexist. And how this dynamic plays out in real time is the focus of my dissertation. So the goals of my research are, first, how to understand how social action happens, and second, how to study these social actions. So here are the outline of my dissertation chapters. Chapter 2 is the focus of my talk today, field and strategic qualification, specialized wellness hemp cannabis shop. But as I mentioned, in the field, all the agents are mutually co-evolving and coexisting, and I'm talking about field here. So all these chapters are related. So the first chapter is drawing the historical trajectories to understand how have political, institutional, and technical arrangement played a role in cannabis policies in the US throughout. Chapter 2 is the focus of my talk today, and chapter 3 is about cannabis growers in the area. I interviewed 2 hemp growers. I tried to understand what their strategies are when they try to grow, their business strategies, their relationship with other allies in the field and with regulatory officials, and they also maintain various overt and covert maintenance structure of their growing. So that's also important for us to focus on. And chapter 4 is actually really interesting because I interviewed 2 hemp farms in this area. They are abiding by the rules that's set by VDACS, Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. That means they do not market psychoactive products. They are only selling CBD products. And so that means these farms are not using loopholes. They are small-scale farm. they call themselves small scale, but these two farms actually brings a lot of political and economic incentive. So much so that they are directly intervening with the state, like for instance, constructing bills, finding patrons for their bill to be presented in the Senate. And chapter 5 is about a VDEX official. Interestingly, all the people whom I talked to in my research, they know her. She was one of the very first few people who actually started overseeing hemp regulation in the area. So I wanted to understand how her experience was, what kind of difficulties she had, and what kind of negotiations that she had to make through with the people in the market itself, and what's her relationship with all these people. And in chapter 6, I interviewed one scientist. She is a botanist. She is part of Roanoke College's Cannabis Studies program. And I also interviewed an advocate. She has been in this area for a very long time in Virginia, and she's kind of a celebrity figure. And not surprisingly, all the people whom I have interviewed, they all know her and spoke very highly of her. And the conclusion chapter will draw the field and locate the agents, their strategies, and sociocultural skills that they apply in the field in staying relevant. So here are the two protagonists of our story today. So I met them first in the summer of 2022. Lee took me to their store while they were in Christiansburg, but now they operate out of Roanoke. So Xenoplus, the name was influenced by a South African guitarist. I don't know why I did that, but it's fun. He was a musician and event planner, and he worked as a DJ for nearly a decade before opening the hemp store. And he told me that this kind of experience really helped him to carry over into his hemp business as well. He spends a lot of time keeping up with cannabis regulation, product science, and constantly trying to align business decisions with their broader goals in this uncertain market. And interestingly, he also has prior experience with illicit drug dealing, so he is well aware of the risks and opportunities that might come with a new field like cannabis market, where regulations and law are not settled and very contested. His wife, Jolie, she had a background in design, and she currently runs her own design studio alongside the hemp hemp store. And she told me that because hemp business is so bad, without her design studio, they would go broke. And she also told me last summer when I met her that she was going to get a Virginia Tech student as her first intern, and she was going to pay her. So their store is like kind of very broad when it comes to this kind of creative and educational networks. And if you go and look at their website, you will see all the things that matter to them. And for them, this is not a cannabis store. They don't like it when you call it like, oh, you sell cannabis. They don't like it. For them, this is a place where wellness meets curiosity and community meets creativity. So here we have to talk about the real culprit here, the 2018 Farm Bill. The Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, what it did is that first it legalized hemp cultivation at a federal level. So suddenly cannabis, at least in one form, became a legitimate agricultural commodity. Second, it introduced a very specific definition. Hemp is cannabis with less than 0.3% delta 9 THC. Now, delta 9 is the one that gets you high. If you consume that, you know that. And Virginia followed a year later in 2019 by establishing its own hemp program aligned with that definition. And this is where things get really interesting, because instead of fully stabilizing or closing the market, this definition actually opened up a lot of ambiguities. People quickly realized that you could produce and sell products that are technically legal under this definition, but still produce psychoactive effects like delta 8 or THCA products. So what we see is that the definition or the law did not close the market. It actually opened up a gray space, or some of my interlocutors said that, he actually said that, it opened up a Pandora's box, where people experiment, push boundaries, and reinterpret what counts as legal. So here I want to take you through this table just to get you familiar with the loopholes and how it works. Mind you, in cannabis chemistry, tiny molecular differences could produce massive biological and legal consequences. So first, delta-9 THC. This is the primary psychoactive compound found in cannabis, and it functions as legal baseline. Now, the important thing is that the law is being built around this just one molecule. And second, delta-8 THC. So it is chemically very similar to delta-9, and it produces a psychoactive effect, but the law did not explicitly mention delta-8 THC. So what producers did is that they derive it from legally grown hemp, usually through CBD conversion. And CBD is the non-psychoactive compound found in cannabis. So here, people really started to do this molecular work around this definition. And the third, THCA, which is more interesting. Wherever you go, you will find THCA. So this product is legal in its raw form, and when it goes for tasting. When you test it, it's less than 0.3% THC, and it's hemp. But once it gets out of the store, you burn it, and it's delta-9 THC immediately. And so here the workaround is not molecular, but temporal. So this table shows us something fundamental here. So the law is trying to regulate by fixing a stable molecule, delta-9 THC, but the object itself is not being stabilized by this different human intervention in the market. They always try to find, to shift it chemically and through temporally, like THCA products. So this is what is creating this gray or quasi-legal space. So it's not simply people breaking rules, but it's them working within the limits of how the law defines the object itself. All right, now it's clear to all of you that this whole thing is very messy. Okay, then how do Joly and Xenoplos would work around to find their position in the field and establish themselves as a legitimate actor in the field? So this is what he said. We just thought that it would be a ripe opportunity and the right business to be in. By 2021, things really started to kick off, and that was when people started feeling comfortable around this industry, and a lot of people started testing the waters with legal boundaries. I think this quote is really important because it shows how the agents themselves understand the market. Not something as legal or illegal, but something to explore. So this is where we see an early stage field where rules are not fully stabilized. On the one hand, it created opportunities for people to experiment with different things, experiment with different and new products, and with new business model. But at the same time, it also produced regulatory barriers and uncertainty. And in Virginia, it took a very specific form. As I already mentioned, you can grow your 4 plants in your backyard, but you cannot buy it from store. So what this law did is that it created this structural contradiction. Legality without a clear blueprint for a legal market. So this contradiction actually created this gray space where hemp-derived products and storefront strategies became central ways of operating. And here I see that one pattern I found across my interview is that people like Joly and Xenoplos, they are trying to compete against other people, which is of course the case with any market, but they are especially trying to compete against what they call illegitimate or bad actors like gas stations or other smoke shop. So for them, these gas stations represent irresponsible groups or bad actors selling products without knowledge, care, or accountability. And here they mentioned something really interesting. So they talked about their support for a proposed regulation that would restrict these kinds of sellers. They were talking about some fine. I don't remember what that is, but they told me that if it gets through, this will get rid of all those bad actors. Now, whether this proposed regulation actually going to get rid of those bad actors, this does not interest me. So what I want to mention here is that we can see that this key tension here. The regulation creates constraints, it limits what they can sell and how they operate, but on the other hand, they also see the regulation as a way to remove competitors and protect their own interest. So the regulation is not just constraint, and it becomes a strategic resource, and this connects to how they understand playing by the rules in the game. So for them, this is not just about compliance, but it is about aligning their business with a particular vision, wellness, care, and community, rather than what they see as the indiscriminate selling practices of gas stations. So for them, using THCA or Delta-8 products is not seen as breaking the rules, but it is working within the spirit of what the market should be. And it is within this spirit that they want to position, function, and exist in the market. And this creates a broader struggle over the future of the market itself. Who gets to define what legitimate cannabis looks like? Small businesses argue that they are building a responsible, wellness-oriented market. Gas stations don't give a shit because they know that enforcement does not have the appetite to go and knock on every gas station's door and find out what they are selling or what they are not selling. So what we see here is that the field is not just shaped by regulation, but it is shaped by agents competing over what the rules should be and how the market ought to become. And then he goes on to say that I would just say for the past, I guess, almost 2 years, THCA has been our biggest selling product. And that's how the market has changed from being strictly pretty much CBD and then starting to include other cannabinoids where we are now. But that's simply CBD products and THCA products that are legally compliant. Now, before I go into this quote, I want to mention this one thing here is that right now, THCA and other Delta-8 THC products are being outlawed by VDAX. They know that people are exploiting the loopholes. But as a gas station owner, if you want to believe in that or not, it's up to you. I just bought THCA flowers just 2 weeks ago. Here's the demonstration. Pass it around.
Drugs are not in there.
Yeah.
Clear.
So what this quote shows is that the quote shows the nature of the field itself. Their shop sits at the edge of the regulated cannabis field. They cannot sell Delta-9 products because those require medical licenses and fall under strict regulation. Instead, they work around Delta-8 and THCA products that exploit gaps in how the law defines THC. So in that sense, they are not just participating in the market, they are actively trying to stabilize these products, although these products remain legally and chemically unstable. So, and part of being legitimate in the field is also about how one maintains their position within these regulatory gaps and uncertainty. And I found that it often comes at a cost. Jolie and I continue to chat on Facebook. I just talked to her like 2 weeks ago, and she told me straight up that our business is dead. We are dead because enforcement is very strong. They are coming after us because we follow the rules, but they are not going after gas stations. So we are pretty much dead. But okay, all right. But here is what I argue. Field position is not always about success or failure, especially at the advent of new field. Because this is a new field in the formation, so it is mostly about who can shape the rules of the game, influence how goods are qualified, and legitimize their position within an emerging and uncertain market. It is about who manages to navigate the uncertainty, build relationship, and make their version of the market stick. All right, moving on to the next quote, THCA is no longer compliant. So what do they do? So this is the very first thing that they do is that they posted this on Instagram. When the state officially reclassified all THC and smokable products as marijuana, we had to pull them from our shelves overnight. But the truth is, we saw this coming. We have been through regulation changes before, and every time we have adapted, learned, and come back stronger. We are still doing what we have always done, offering safe, affordable, and effective hemp products we personally believe in, and standing up for small businesses who care about quality and community. This is, in the end, it's another chance to prove what we are made of. So here the language is not just a mere form of communication to their clients, or it is not just kind of they are venting out their frustration at everything that is going on. But it is a strategic social tool that they employ to actually send the message that we matter, what we do in this field matter. So part of their strategies involved to think of how to retain their existing client base. And second, under the conditions of uncertainty, what would be the effective means of communication to their clients. So the language, we saw this coming, points us to a broader social structure of the field, where they use their sense-making, interpretation, experiences, and adaptations to position themselves in the field. And so the structure within which the field is operating is not always about regulatory compliance per se, but it is rather the underlying ethic and intent of the cannabis market as a lifestyle, self-care, rather than a recreational gas station THC flower. And I want to shout out to Daniel Breslau for pointing out this to me. So communication does become, say, crucial socio-political and technical tool they have at their disposal to navigate the precarity of the situation. Even before the overnight banning of the products, because interestingly they could anticipate what's coming, because they knew this is going to happen, so they already started building networks among their allies and with regulatory officials, so that whenever it bans, they can retain their allies when things go awry. So then what's happening here is that the THCA and other loops under which they were functioning, these are not just products or just like some kind of approach to like sell market their strategies, but it becomes like a strategic device for them. So THC as a molecule actually allowed them to shape their business strategies based on their anticipation of what might come next. They shape how consumers understand the product, how they use it, and what they think they are buying. And their store actively explains and curates these products, while gas stations simply sell them without that layer of qualification. So then the distinction is not just about the product itself, it's about how the product is being framed, interpreted, and made meaningful. So I asked them like, okay, all this is happening, but then how do you market your products? And interestingly, she said that we can't even market anything to begin with. Literally, all of our marketing and education happens one-on-one. People come to our store looking for something. Whatever we were able to carry is no longer available. So we have to go through all of this education of trying to find something that's similar for them, which is especially frustrating because you may have noticed that when people find a particular thing that they really like, they only want that thing and they don't want to experiment anymore. So what we see here is that this is not a conventional form of marketing where marketing is just about the products. But in this case, it is less about selling the products to their clients however they see fit, but it is about finding this one particular thing that will work for their clients. So two things are happening here as I argue. First, the infrastructure barrier. The hemp store for them is an infrastructure based on the idea of a particular logic, which is care, small business, and community building. That logic itself acts both as uplifting for them to legitimize their position in the field and the product they sell. At the same time, it restricts their business when products can no longer be sold. And second, as the rules are not stable, this renders qualifications of goods invalid. So they'll have to find different ways to qualify the goods. So they'll have to explain to their clients things like, hey, look, we have been telling you that this is going to happen, but now this happened, but don't worry, we have this particular thing that will work for you. So this is the kind of strategies that they employ to retain their clients. But again, like this does not make their job any easier because as she mentioned, because customers like one thing and they want to stick to that, right? So which is like similar for all of us. Then for them, what I found is that the tension is to find the right balance between making their way through these uncertain waters and by using these regulatory loopholes and the fluid products, and at the same time satisfying their clients and retaining them who wants consistency with their products. So then their store not just become a point of sale like other gas stations, it is a place where the market is being actively made and remade through a consistent flow of information with their allies, clients, regulatory officials, and everyone that they could bring under their umbrella. So their attempts to stabilize this business and market is less about the product, but it is more about explaining things to people. It's fundamentally about sharing and interpreting information about what is legal, what is not, what is risky, what is currently viable. So in this market, what circulates is not just goods, it's knowledge about how goods exist. So the technical know-how, a kind of cultural capital plays a crucial role in the field, and not everyone has this knowledge. Like people like Joly and Xenopoulos, they spent a lot of time understanding cannabinoids, legal definitions, and how products behave. And this allows them to differentiate themselves from others. So the knowledge here is not just information, it becomes a way of building legitimacy, gaining trust, and maintaining a position in an uncertain market. Then the second quote is also important. So I asked them about the marketing their stuff, right? So see, Joly told me that again, you can't really talk about it on social media and on the internet. If I use words like hemp, CBD, anything like that, it basically gets shadow banned on social media and it will get no attention. I try to be frugal with what I post and try not to have any of those words in it, even though that's literally my whole business. So here we see this, here is what I argue, that regulation is not just happening through the state. Yes, the state has the command, but it's not just happening through the state. It is also happening through these platforms. So it's kind of a private regulation that's happening. There's a whole set of literature that I need to explore after my speech. But so when products are technically legal, they cannot openly communicate about. Like THCA, they just can't go and say that, hey, we have THCA, because it will catch the attention of the authorities. But at the same time, they also can't say that, hey, we sell hemp, because I don't care, I want to get high. Why should I buy things from you? So what they are doing is that they are carefully managing language, feasibility, and interpretation. So the relationship here are not just social, they function as infrastructure. They enable circulation of knowledge about what products are, how they work, what is legal, what is not legal, what is currently viable. Okay, this is the whole messy thing where they operate, and this is how they operate. Now I want to take a step back and want to kind of make sense of how the broad social structure of the field is taking shape. So there are three key dimensions, as I argue. The first is regulatory instability. As it has been already clear to all of you that the rules are constantly shifting, what is legal today may be restricted tomorrow, and this creates a situation where they cannot rely on stable legal categories, but instead must continuously interpret and anticipate regulation. Second is knowledge asymmetry. Not all agents in the field have the same level of expertise. Specialty shop like Joly's and Xenopoulos, they rely heavily on technical knowledge, regulatory awareness, one-on-one education, whereas gas stations operate with minimal engagement with this kind of complexities. Third and most important is the relational dependence. Because neither regulation or the product categories are not stable, the relationship become very central for them to exist. Trust, communication, and ongoing interaction with other agents, customers, and regulators become essential for the market to function. So what we see here is that the market is held together not just by formal institutions, but by social relationship and ongoing negotiation. And here I want to give you this example. So Joly told me that once they were selling a product which was mislabeled. It was not even their fault. It was the fault of the company from where they bought this stuff. And the VDEX came after them for inspection. They did not realize there was a faulty label on their shelf, and they were imposed a very heavy fine. The funny thing is that they knew that something like this would come. Some mishaps like this would happen. Remember, I earlier told you about how they already started building networks before they could even before whatever they are anticipating comes. So here, that relationship really played out well for them. The VDEX official whom I interviewed, they immediately got in touch with her and they just got away with a small fine. They were not happy about it, but they were safe. And she told me, and I asked, like, how did that happen? She told me that, well, I don't know, like I think it's our ability to build the connection with them. And she told me that if you know how to reach out to regulatory authorities and if you know how to talk to these people, then they are willing to help you. Now, so what does this penalty show here from analytically? So what I see is that the penalty shows that they are trying to challenge the precariousness of the situation itself. Yes, they are very vulnerable with the social situation and the structure they are in. It's very precarious. They don't know what's going to happen next. And the state is the ultimate authority. But they are trying to challenge the precariousness of the situation by maintaining and developing this relationship. And although you might think that the state has the ultimate authority, but as you can see, they brought the state to cooperate with them as well. This is how they challenge the authority as well. And especially in a new field like this, even state also needs these kinds of events to mature and return with more authority. So both market agents and states are mutually enforced and co-evolving in this field at the moment. So in that sense, this is a field in formation, one where legality, legitimacy, and even the nature of the product itself are still being actively defined. So rather than a stabilized strategic action field, what we see here is an emergent field where socio-technical devices and social relationship jointly sustain market coordination. When I was preparing for this speech, I came across this cool article, and I just wanted to throw some of my arguments here as well. Yes, it is chaotic, but it is not simply chaos. It is a partially structured field with uneven outcomes. This article makes one thing clear, that Virginia is currently dealing with two overlapping markets, hemp and marijuana, which are legally separated but materially intertwined, as it has been clear to all of you by now. And this is exactly the kind of environment where Joly and Xenoplos operate. As small business owners, they are the part of group that are actually building this hemp market, investing in compliance, learning the rules, and developing relationship with people. But what this article interestingly shows us here is that as regulation tightens, these same agents are increasingly being squeezed out. Enforcement expands, compliance costs rise, and the structure of the market begins to favor large, well-capitalized operators. If you remember the Facebook post, you see this is what they were seeing, and this is how they see the market now. And at the same time, from an STS perspective, I see the word chaos in a very interesting way, because the chaos also reflects the market agents, and also it includes the state, to capture and fully stabilize the object itself as a homogeneous thing, so that all can have they can kind of function in the market based on this one definition. But it's not happening at the moment. The law attempts to define cannabis through thresholds, testing, categories, but products like THCA and Delta-8 overflow this definition. And when that happens, regulation does not disappear, it intensifies. It becomes more selective, more uneven, and more consequential. And this is the kind of area where Joly and Xenoplos are caught in this tension. They rely on technical knowledge, relationship, and careful positioning to remain legitimate, but they also face a system where the very rules they followed can suddenly shift against them. So the question who benefits becomes a question of field position and capacity. And in this emerging market, those who can absorb regulatory change, influence policy, and align with dominant definitions of safety and legality are most likely to survive. And for small businesses like Joly and Xenoplos, staying in the field itself becomes the central struggle. All right, my dissertation ends, of course, but the field doesn't end. So, and more broadly, this has implications beyond cannabis. What I have shown here is how people organize markets under conditions of uncertainty, where rules are unclear, technologies are evolving, and legitimacy is contested. And this is not unique to cannabis. Here I want to thank my friend Alex Rewigan from MIT's History Anthropology STS program, who finished his PhD last year. He did his work on cannabis sustainable agriculture in the Emerald Triangle in California. So he gave me this brilliant example, like things emerging climate-related markets like carbon credits or renewable energy. They are also fields in formation, rules are evolving, different stakeholders has varying opinion about what counts as legitimate practices. And similarly, in areas of inequality, whether we are talking about gig work, informal economies, small-scale entrepreneurship, or DIY activities of LGBTQ communities, people often operate in spaces where formal protections are weak. They rely on relationship, knowledge, and adaptation to survive. So what we learn from this case is that markets are actively built through everyday practices, experimentations, and negotiation. And if we want to think about building more equitable or sustainable markets, especially in the context of climate change or inequality, we need to pay attention to these grassroots processes rather than assuming that the regulation alone will stabilize them. So this is all from the cannabis. But I was thinking like, okay, let me think about something fun example where I can use the strategic action field outside of market. So then I am trying to see that, okay, we can see the similar dynamics outside market. For example, the geopolitical conflicts like the recent US-Iran tension. So from a strategic action field perspective, this is not just a military conflict. It is a field where different agents are competing over power, legitimacy, and rules of engagement. Iran does not try to match militarily with United States. Instead, it adopts strategic actions that account for its position in the field, such as targeting regional infrastructure, using indirect or proxy forms of engagement, cheap drones, Strait of Hormuz, so then thus raising the broader costs of conflict. These are not random reactions, they are calculated moves based on their relative positions and constraint. So just like in the cannabis market, they are not simply responding to fixed rules, they are actively interpreting the situation, leveraging available resources, and shaping how the field evolves. And this shows us something more general. Whether in markets or geopolitics, fields are structured by unequal positions and agents engaged in strategic action to navigate, resist, and reshape those structures. All right, this is all from me, but people who are very close to me, they know that I like extreme music. So I'm gonna blast something here. So please assail your ear for 40 seconds, please. This is not irrelevant. This is very relevant to my work. The band is from Virginia, can you imagine that? But they are disbanded now. So here we go. Gracias.
What was really interesting to me was the talks by the owner about like social media and marketing and the roles of that, especially because a lot of your paper is discussing about kind of the inconsistent like state governance from there. But as far as social media is concerned, that is like a larger like social media platform and the effects of like shadow banning and such. And we live in like an algorithm where it's like where you can't say kill, we have to say unalive, which kind of results to a lot of kind of like algorithmic like self-censorship. But even that is pretty inconsistently like regulated in the sense where like if your content's considered educational, you can start saying suddenly more words than you were previously, but there's no way to know that until you post it for a lot of these things. I don't know if you, in your work, if you've dived into kind of like these digital consequences in any way, or has it been mostly kind of like material?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because it's mostly material. So I actually applied to University of Virginia's digital democracy postdoc. I got rejected. Like I just got the email like a couple of days ago. So that's where I proposed that, yes, there is this this avenue to study the digital consequences of marketing these products, especially for small scale businesses. But right now my dissertation does not focus on that, but it's a further avenue. Maybe when I apply for a postdoc, then I will just say that, okay, this is really important with the advent of AI and stuff like that. So it's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a really great talk, Dhritiman. It was really great to see your work like this, and I'm looking forward to knowing about the other chapters too. I had a question about, it seems like the actor Jolly, the Xenoplus, it's very rational actor oriented. These actors seem very preternaturally anticipatory of like what's going to happen, and in some sense that's really great because you can explore all of these different ways in which they're strategizing, negotiating. But on the other hand, that kind of expertise and know-how and savvy that they have to sort of adapt is probably something not everybody might have. And so I was wondering about the kinds of, I don't like to use the word irrational, but like it's a very like, it's almost like a chess game that they're playing, right? And can you think of this, of any instances in your field work or thinking where it kind of eludes that kind of chess game kind of metaphor?
Yeah, no, I don't think I have an answer to that question, but I will point at one thing. Yes, I also don't like to use the irrational, but at the same time, I also don't see that the every decisions they take based out of their rational, calculative decision making. Pierre Bourdieu touched upon this, so he talked about unconscious, like the habitus, like they have already been part of this field for a very long time historically. So their position in the broader structural field actually allowed them to actually anticipate these kinds of like anticipation, and they allowed them to anticipate the movement like very naturally. It's not about they are always calculating rationally, but let's talk about this. Bourdieu gives this amazing example of like hockey. Like there are all these rules how you play hockey or any game, but when you are in the field, your movements are not fully rationalized rules of the game. You always like kind of what do you call it? What was that word? I forgot the word. Sorry.
You respond to what's happening.
Huh?
You respond to what's happening.
No. What is that word? That you don't come prepared when you give a speech. Use impromptu. Impromptu. Yes, impromptu. So they take like impromptu decision, and it's when the 2018 Farm Bill came, they were not rationalizing that, oh, okay, now we will explore. It just happened, like, okay, there is a field, oh, we can do this thing. So let's experiment with that.
But I was also thinking of that kind of tacit knowledge too, that not just the calculus, but even the emotional kind of part. But that's, yeah, as part of their, approach and orientation in the field. But, yeah.
Thank you. I will think about it. I'm sorry.
No. It was really great talk. It was just made me think about, also reflecting on my own work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your talk today. I know we've all been looking forward to seeing you up here and hearing what you're doing. So I would like to go back to the regulatory of like the VDAX enforcer coming into the store. It reminds me a lot of a book I read by Craig Hetherington called The Government of Beans, which talks about soybeans in Paraguay. Anyways, about how they regulate pesticides around like shared public spaces. And part of what this author does is examines these enforcers as also a kind of actor in how they enforce the rules by checking boxes or deciding and like kind of the interpersonal relations between those. And so I was wondering if you had thought about like also viewing these VDAX enforcers like and interviewing them to kind of understand how they are shaping the enforcement of the market and what is and how that creates and impacts the gray spaces.
Yeah, chapter 5 is about the VDEX official whom I interviewed, and she mentioned clearly to me that because VDEX is historically like a food regulation government branch, so suddenly they have this agriculture commodity that they have no experience of, because what they initially did is that like they tried to regulate the edibles, but the smokable products are everywhere and they didn't know what to do about it. Then she told me that, like, yes, we from the beginning we knew that they were going to use those loopholes, but we didn't even know how to enforce it, because whatever the loopholes they are using, it's like it's lawful. Like THCA, when you test it, it's hemp, but when you burn it, it's straight up marijuana. So that chapter is going to talk about like what the challenges are and how much time it would take them to come up with another sets of new regulations to tell them that you cannot sell THCA or Delta 8. But what's happening here in the field is that VDEX is closing one loop, that one loophole, but then these people find another loop to stay in the loop itself. So it's like a kind of a vicious cycle that has been continuing. And there are like tons of cannabinoids like that. And now things are going to change because the recreational market is coming, and VDEX will only enforce the hemp. With marijuana, I think it's going to be taken over by Virginia Cannabis Control Authority. So definitely there is this challenge from the state as well. As I mentioned, state is also evolving and learning from these episodes. Does it answer your question?
Hello. It's so nice to hear about your dissertation. It's really fascinating. And so my question is, if we're focused on the economic sociology with it combined with STS, so I think is a more kind of the more classic in the economic sociology, as you are talking about the market. So I'm just wondering also, as they talk about the irrational and rational, this comparison between the different actors. So I have a very brief question is about what is the mechanism or the reasons for these different actors, or just for the shop owners, how could they define the price of the cannabis? The price problem is, yeah.
So the price is based on how the VDEX set the rules for hemp, especially. So VDEX give them all the information about, okay, so these are the quantities that you can sell in a particular box, and these are the appropriate criteria of finding the prices. Unfortunately, the agents in the market, they cannot directly intervene in conducting their price unless they are buying from some like private hemp grower. But if they are buying, the cannabis store owner, if they are buying it from other companies, those companies set the rule based on what VDEX tell them to put the price label on their products. So I did not ask VDEX about how they come up with this price criteria, but these people are not like direct. Yes, of course, they are trying to intervene and letting the state know that we need profit, like 3 times the price of the whatever the things that we are making or selling, but they are not being able to take a direct participant in making up the price. So that's why it is not a stable field, because the rules of exchange when it comes to licensing and retailing are not clear. The hemp farm that I interviewed, they have presented a bill, the same bill that Abigail Spanberger signed recently. They have come up with this idea of pricing. So I asked them, how did you come up with the pricing idea, or the price for the licenses and the products? They told me that they have compiled all the information from the previous states in the US who actually formulated the price, and they tried to figure it out, what will work for them in New River Valley area, what didn't work for people in California. So this is like a lot of comparison and contrast that is going on. And Virginia as a field, when I talk to these people, I realized that, yes, these people are coming up with something that is based on the failure and the success of other markets that's happening in other states.
Congratulations. My question actually follows directly from this. I'm interested in the bigger picture conclusions about gray markets. And do you see this as a story that helps you explain what might happen in some of these other example cases that you mentioned at the end, whether it's DIY, X, Y, or Z? Or is there an existing kind of historical case of gray markets that helps you understand what is going to happen next in your case? So I guess the big question is can you connect this up and compare it, or maybe contrast it to some other gray market fields outside of cannabis and hemp?
Absolutely. When Russia was slapped with sanctions, they used all this shadow fleet to to pass their oil in these tankers through sea, and there is this whole mechanism of coming up with these loopholes. And have you watched this movie by Nicolas Cage called Lords of War? There he actually says that how to smuggle arms from all these different places through sea. One of the loopholes that they use is that paint the ship, whatever the company we are from, and name something else. And they always come up with, and Iran is doing the same. They are trying to find all this, all this old ship and cargo which will evade sanction. China did the same with U.S. naval blockade. I think this kind of strategic approach is actually going to help us understand all these gray activities that are happening in everywhere pretty much economically.
I had a question about the gas stations, because I kind of feel bad for them now. Did you end up interviewing anybody in the gas stations?
I am going to this summer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you say that they are part of the gray market, or are they like in the formal white, non-gray?
So when a
Non-black?
couple of months ago, I went to the store near the downtown, and I asked them, "You cannot sell this, right?" And he told me that no, we can sell. But I told them that but THCA is banned now. It's all politics, and he just refused to explain anything. And he knows that enforcement is uneven. So it will be interesting for me to go and talk to them. I mean, what they think. Is they thinking, okay, we don't care, we are just selling it. But maybe they have other perceptions about okay, we are selling it, we have these different reasons. That's why I'm going to reach out to them. There are all these places in downtown, so I'm just going and talking to them. I think it would be really interesting to compare with Jolly and Zenoplus's vision of wellness with them selling THCA products. The bottle, I bought it from Wildside Smoke Shop. I went to them, I approached them for an interview, they refused. So they are very, very anxious about giving an interview, because that means they are doing some really shadow shitty stuff.
I want to say that, gentlemen, I think sometimes you're talking about Jolly and Xenoplus's conception of the market and these gas stations, but you're really giving their kind of perspective onto the field, right? So one, kind of going along with Monami's thing, it also asks the gas station people how they think about people like Jolly and Xenoplus and see if there's any kind of mirror.
Yeah, mine is really a follow-up question to Monami's question, and that is where are dispensaries in this, right? Because medical marijuana dispensaries in the state, right? And so they seem to also be utilizing loopholes, but exist in a little bit different space. And I'm wondering your thoughts on that.
They are using loopholes?
I don't know that we would call them loopholes, but I think that there are interesting ways to become in medical need.
The only thing that I can say here is that because my research does not focus on medical dispensaries, it only focuses on the hemp market here. But I went to Virginia's National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws conference last year. And they had all these big companies coming up in the conference, and they are only talking about having all these patrons so that they can present bill in the House so that it gets passed through. and that they can have a monopoly in the market. When I started talking to these people here in the state, that's exactly what they are trying to prevent. So one of the growers whom I interviewed, he told me that they, and also Joly and Xenopoulos, they told me that they did not want Glenn Youngkin to sign a recreational bill back then. They liked it that they vetoed it. I asked why? Because if he would have sanctioned it, then because they already have a lot of money and their political power, so they would have immediately taken over. Then I asked them, okay, maybe 2 years later they can take over as well. They are like, okay, fine, but we need to buy time for ourselves. And the grower, he told me that once the recreational market opens up, he already got a license, he is going to have his own farmers market. Then the competition becomes more uneven and more spread out. So it will be really interesting to see how it works out. And he also says that he is also about the community care and the small farmers. And he says that, you know, all these medical marijuanas, they are selling products, but we don't know what the qualities are. They might be selling you shitty stuff, and 10 years down the line, you will have lung cancer or something like that. But what we are doing here is more pure. And what interestingly, he also told me that before Abigail Spanberger wins, because she was going to win anyway, they could see that, he is going to form a secret group. And he's going to tell me all about it, and I'm going to meet him in the summer. So in this secret group, he is trying to advance this agenda to other people and bring people from communities. And he thinks that if you bring all these people to your umbrella, then it will make the market even out for them. So, and also he told me that, okay, we are not out here going to challenge these medical marijuana bodies directly. Just like Iran is not challenging US directly. They are like, you know, if we do that, they will destroy us. So these are the only things that we can do so that we can maintain our position in the market as well.
Okay. Yeah, Janet, you have a question?
Yeah, I really love am I getting an echo? Okay, just me.
Yeah, you're kind of cutting out on us.
Sorry. Is that any better?
No, that's not better. Do you want to type it in the chat, and we can read it on our end?
Okay,
Is that
all right.
helpful?
Maybe I can try. Hang on a second.
Try again. Oh, I think they're doing it now.
Does that work? Oh, damn. I'll type it in the chat. I'm
Oh
sorry.
no, now you're good. You're good now.
I don't know what's going on in this room. Anyway, so I did enjoy your talk. I thought you had mentioned somewhere early on when you were talking about the different actors in the field that social justice advocates were among them. And I kind of wondered, because I know one of the reasons I wanted to vote for opening up marijuana laws was because of all the African Americans who were in jail for selling that. And so I thought that was kind of a component in legalizing it. And I wondered if you had encountered that.
Yes. So the person whom I interviewed, as I mentioned, that she is like kind of a celebrity figure among these people, and she was introduced to me by Joly and Xenopoulos, interestingly. And she has been like doing activism for like more than a decade now, and her family members were being jailed for possessing marijuana. And she also talked to me about she is trying to find a way in the market for the people who are coming out of prison and who are trying to find a livelihood, and especially because Virginia is cannabis market is very white people dominated market. So she is trying to find a ways to come up with an idea where black farmers would also get a chance, because the enforcement always tends to come after the black people or the people of color, regardless of whether the market is legalized or not. And it has been seen in other cases as well, like in California, the gun laws are specifically made because black people started having guns. So something like that. So she is talking about bringing these social justice issues to the market and how we can have a socially equitable market in place. And C is also actively trying to make bills and finding people of color as a patron for her bill to be submitted in the House and the Senate. So this is how she is kind of involving in this field. But at the same time, she also has a very soft spot for small businesses. And Jolie told me that without her, they would not have been able to continue. And she really influenced them to strategize their position in the field and how actually bring the messages of care and community to other people. So yes, advocates are not a direct participant in it, but they definitely shape the idea of the market itself from a social justice standpoint. And my chapter is going to particularly shed light on that. Last chapter.
I just had a kind of a conceptual question. And so a lot of what you were talking really reminded me of, have you read any of the social movement, sociology of social movement literature? Mm-hmm. You should look into that a bit. Like, I know your dissertation's almost, but I think there are some questions about some of the concepts that have been developed there, like resource mobilization and political opportunity, and that kind of work really, and those concepts of how to actually position themselves in a very unequal terrain,
yes,
might be useful for you to kind of, maybe at least mention in your dissertation.
Yeah, I actually mentioned, I just remember now. So when the AIDS epidemic started happening in California, so the activists actually really came together and to actually try to bring marijuana into the into the market so that the people with AIDS can be benefited by it. And also Stephen Epstein also talked about
the other one.
Stephen Epstein also talked about he is the Messiah, Jeffrey Epstein, huh? So Stephen Epstein also talked about how the family members of AIDS patients came together and relearned the medical journals and really made themselves like kind of an expert in the field so that they could challenge the medical bodies. So they kind of started a movement where they were able to position themselves in the medical field itself, and that was helpful for them. Is that a good?
Yeah.
Social movements that, talk specifically about like specific concepts,
right.
and I would recommend you look at political opportunities and resource mobilization as things like,
Yeah, so Monami, the theory of fields that Dhritiman's drawing on is Fligstein and Doug McAdam, and Doug McAdam's a social movement sociologist, so a lot of those concepts are actually built into the framework. He was just focusing more on Fligstein because Fligstein's more known for like the sociology of market stuff. But it's there in the background. I agree with Monami that it could be pulled forward for sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Dhritiman.
You are not allowed.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Then I will just
I'm kidding, bro. No, go ahead.
No, okay. Wonderful talk. I would like to know more about the knowledge or the expertise possessed by Xenoplus and Jolie, because looks like I feel like there's like more story they can share, like how did they like how did they come to be aware of the label of the product might be wrong, so they might cause them into troubles. Do they bear some kind of expertise of testing the purities of their product, or do they have some kind of received wisdom or some kind of tested knowledge, like Monami said, to read through the label or to have a trusted sources to provide them products. So I just want to know more about that part of the story.
Yes, this is where things get really interesting. Yes, for Jolie and Xenoplus, they have been in the field for a very long time. And yes, part of the network that they are building, they really do have trustworthy sources. When I was but here also the challenge for my study, because I talked about a field in Southwest Virginia, but it actually is like kind of like problematic because it was pointed out to me by a professor from Oklahoma State University when I met him in Morocco last year. He told me that they have sources outside the state as well. So how do you see the field is expanding? Because Joly and Xenopoulos, they have trustworthy source and their scientific labs where they get their products done. It's somewhere, it's outside Virginia. So they do have the trustworthy sources from where they get all the expertise, and those relationships developed over time because they really need to understand what the strains are they are going to sell, what will work for someone with anxiety or sleep problems. These are all like anecdotal evidences, but they think that that's the best, that they got it from their experiences. And if they don't find someone trustworthy enough in this area, then they will have to rely on other sources. And this is all the product that Wildside Smoke Shop gets. They are all from California or Oklahoma and places like this. So then the field actually expands, and to contain the field of the market itself in Southwest Virginia becomes really problematic. So the knowledge are actually kind of coming from all over the places, and it's who they can trust to it is also developed over time with their experiences. Does that answer your question?
And again, it sets up my question. So I have a methods question for you about trust. This whole topic is about kind of like gray spaces and gray areas. Can you say a little bit about how you decide whether to trust what somebody says, whether these folks here, or how you are able to get the trust of certain partners to talk to you and other people to say, get out of my store? Just for the benefit of other people, how have you navigated these trust issues?
The first way I navigated was to reach out to I thought that I would not get any reception, but I reached out to like some cannabis groups on Facebook, and I just mentioned that, hey, I am doing this and I need some people to talk to me. My first interview was with a grower. I went to his place, to his farm, and he was very positive about what he has to share, and he was really excited to have me there. There was an old guy. He is known as, I should not say his name. He is part of Roanoke College's Cannabis Studies program. He has traveled all around the world. I think he now moved to Spain or something. So I asked him a question when we were inside the greenhouse. I asked him a question like something not related to cannabis, and he went ballistic on me. He was about to physically assault me that day, my very first day in fieldwork. It is challenging to gain the trust of these people, and I actually ended up talking to the grower whom I met. He told me that he has always been like this, and they have this because that guy, he is like 66, and throughout his past 50 years he has been in this field. So he saw he was in black market, he was dealing drugs, and now he is moving on to this quasi-legal space. So they have some paranoia about trusting other people and sharing how they see the whole thing. But all in all, they also told me that, hey, if you are here, you have to smoke some joint with us, because if you don't smoke a joint, that means you are a police. So those are the challenges, but I had to navigate very carefully that I don't smoke, and because it will muddy the waters methodologically. But at the same time, it was not that difficult to find these people to talk to, but it is very limited. I wanted to reach out to this podcaster. He's like a podcaster. Yes, thank you. He's a podcaster. So he did not want to share any information with me. And Wildside Smoke Shop, they also don't trust me. They said that we cannot share some of the business information with us. They don't even want to hear what I am trying to do. I am not trying to understand your business methods or something like that. I want to understand your opinion. And they said, no, we cannot do that. So it was hard methodologically to get the trust of these people. That's why I have a very limited amount of people whom I talk to. That's the challenge I faced. the speaking of trust, how I could trust these people, what they are telling me, I have to think about it, Matt. I don't have an answer to that right now.
Yeah, I have a question again. So I think, if when you come to the last slides, and it's about the transformation and your goals, as you mentioned that according to Callon, that the market is always in making, and you say the market is always in shaping as well. So my question is maybe concerned about what kind of direction or what kind of trend that you suppose that this green market are going or have any transformation is going to be expanded or become narrow or have new association in the future. I know it's must unstable or unpredictable, but
yeah.
you should have some feeling about this. Yeah.
No, I do not have a feeling about it, and I'm not trying to have a feel about it, because the goal of my research is to understand how social action happens and how we study social action. This is an uncertain terrain, and people are doing all these activities during uncertainty. That's the only goal of my research, to understand that. Where it's going, I can't tell you right now, and I probably will not be able to tell you 2 months down the line. And that's what the beauty of my study lies, because I am talking about something that happened back in 2025, but using this theoretical framework, you can understand what's going to happen 3 months down the line. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that question. Probably I would never have. Thank you.
I have one more quick question for you about the actual location of these markets in Southwest Virginia and in Appalachia, and wondering if you could speak more about how that shapes these markets, and if you'd kind of tap into Appalachia studies at all and bring that into your work.
Oh Lord, I have to understand. I don't know like how their position in different spaces actually kind of shaping their strategies. This is something that I'll have to think about it, because there are some rules that you cannot have a store like some few meters away from the schools or something. There are definitely those infrastructure questions, but I have so far not been focused on that, but that's a good idea.
Well, with the infrastructure, but also like the Southwest Virginia culture and like the culture of Appalachia, and that kind of shaping this as well.
I don't know.
Well, early on, there were thoughts that in some cases, this hemp-derived THC was kind of scrambling normal political spectrum stuff, right? Like there would be both progressive but also conservative folks who were supporting it in different ways that didn't kind of easily map. Did that show up in your interviews? Because that was an early idea, but were you seeing that when you talked to people?
Mm-hmm.
No.
So where is Southwest Virginia for you?
Within driving distance.
The real question is where were your approximately where were your field sites in terms of counties, maybe?
The New River Valley area. I was supposed to travel to the Radford. They denied. Galax is not part of Southeast Virginia, probably. The farther I went was Roanoke Valley. Then I went to this place, Ironton, down in Floyd, where Buffalo Hemp Market is. They refused. So the Christiansburg, Radford, Blacksburg, Roanoke area is where I see the Southwest Virginia is, where it is accessible for me to reach out to the people. And all these places are part of Montgomery. Roanoke is not Montgomery, but it's Montgomery County here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those geography questions really stresses me out, but.
Great talk. I really enjoyed it. I visited a friend in New York City maybe 2 years ago when they were also in a gray area of their cannabis legalization, where I think it was something like, it was legal to own marijuana and to grow it, but in order to sell it, you needed like licenses, and then the state wasn't giving out licenses, something like that. And so what would happen is these Zaza shops, that's what they were called, would just kind of like pop up randomly, and they would just sell as much as they could, and then they would eventually get found out by the police and then get shut down. But the logic, I guess, was that they would sell enough before the cops would find out that when they would get shut down, like they would get some kind of fine, and so then the cost of the fine would be worth it based off of how much they would sell. And I thought it was interesting because you're talking a lot about loopholes, whereas that isn't necessarily a loophole. It's just like, we're just gonna break the law. And I was curious if you encountered anything that was like that, because you were talking about certain fines and how, like, it sounded more like things that were out of these people's control. But were there ever instances where people were like, we're just going to break the law and just let the consequences happen?
Yes. When I was showing you my chapter outlines, I talked about 2 hemp farms, right? So I asked them about it, what these people are doing. And they are like, no, this is illegal. This is outright illegal. So, and they have relationship with law firms and with other patrons in the house. They also told them, just don't do it. They can say that because they have a lot of economic incentives, because their business is very big. One farm whom I interviewed, their owner is a race car driver. He has a lot of money and a lot of resources to do. So they can have that at their disposal to say that, okay, it's illegal. But for these people, like I mentioned, this is not a market they see as a legal or illegal. It's something to experiment, and they are experimenting with it until the moment it gets shut down, and then they bring all this network information to remain legitimate. So for Jolie and Xenoplas, it's not about we are going to sell and we are going to be the big owner of this hemp store in Roanoke. It's not like that. It's about making their situation legitimate in the field, and that matters, which they think that going to help them in the future because they bring all these ideas and knowledge to the field itself.
Thank you.
Yeah? All right. Well, join me in congratulating Dhritiman.
Thank you all.
Can I get 2 minutes, please? Just want to acknowledge a few things here. I came in August 2021. I was not even 26 years old, and here you are seeing a 30-year-old man. And I want to just mention a few things. The very first walk that I took with Ian to get our hockey passport ID, and the very first walk I took with Jim Collier from our first TA class. First summer with Matthew, our good drum, played Frisbee. I loved, I lost again, lots of scars, battered. But what you are seeing here is a human being who actually cares about a lot of people. And last summer, I told Matthew that, hey, this is probably going to be my last summer. And he said that, don't say that yet. But it looks like I'm going to be here for one more summer. So I'll be here. I know what you are thinking, that more Frisbee. I'm sorry to say that I have a tennis elbow now. So probably not much Frisbee. And I want to shout out to two amazing mothers. My mom, she suffered a lot, and she taught me things that no books can ever teach anyone. And the second woman, amazing mother, mom of 2 kids. They are my friends as well. Her name is Suzanne Helfen. I shared some really good moment with her in her kitchen. She allowed me to use her kitchen. And we sat on the floor, and she really talked through about things that matters to her and matters to me. And we really yelled at the whole world. And her presence in the past couple of weeks actually meant a lot for me. And of course, that would not have been possible without her partner, who is sitting here in front of us. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. And next week we have Karen Healy coming in from Duke. So please come if you can. All right. Thanks.
It was really good.
Did I do well?
Yes, you did.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for the shout out to Susan too.
Oh no, C means a lot to me. I mean, yeah, I wanted to do that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
One mic.
You feel relieved?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the help that day.
Congratulations.